Welcome to Chapter 4, Part 2, where we are going to start getting into parallel and perpendicular lines. Here we are going to be asked to write an equation in slope-intercept form for the line that passes through the given point. So this would be the given point, and it's parallel to this graph. You're also going to be asked to graph it maybe in your assignment. I'm not going to cover graphing today because I covered it yesterday. So if you want to check out how to graph, you can check out video Chapter 4. Part 1. But before we get into this, we have to know what is a parallel slope. Well, a parallel slope is going to be the same slope that you are given. So a parallel slope, the slope parallel to this line, would be 6. So M is 6. The next part we need to know is what we did yesterday. Remember when we had y equals mx plus b? Once you figure out your slope, it's exactly the same stuff as yesterday. We have a slope and we have a point. So now we can use slope-intercept form to find our line that is parallel to this guy that runs through this point. So let's go ahead and try it. Remember that we have a x and a y, so plug in your x and your y. So it's 4 is in for my y, the 6 is in for my slope, and 2 is in for my x. We leave the b. Solve for b. 4 equals 12 plus b. Now I'm going to subtract the 12 over to both sides. I'm going to move my work right up there. So now I have negative 8 is equal to b. So now my new equation, y equals, what was my slope? My slope was 6x. And what did you just find for our b? Our b was minus 8. So here is a line that has a slope of 6 that is parallel to y equals 6x plus 16 that runs through this point. Next, ask for a perpendicular slope. Well, the first thing we have to know is what is a perpendicular slope? A perpendicular slope is flipped and negated. So here, for our slope, what does flip mean? Well, flip means I'm going to flip it upside down. Remember that 6 is 6 over 1, so if I flip it, it's going to be 1 over 6. If it was 3/4, it would be 4 over 3. If it was 2/3, it would be 3 over 2. It is also negated, so I'm going to negate it. So I put a minus sign in front. Notice that this equation and point are the same as 1, but look what happens when I have a perpendicular slope. I put 1 over 6 and negate it. So here we go again. It's the same steps. Once you find your slope, it's the same steps as yesterday. X, y, plug them in. We have 4 equals negative 1/6 times 2 plus b. Simplified, it goes 4 equals negative 2, 6, if I can fit it on the screen, plus b. I'm moving my work up here. Now, what do I have to do? I add it over. So it's, actually I'm going to simplify first. It's 4 equals negative 1/3 plus b. Now you can see me adding. You can see how I'm adding that 1/3 over. So now it's 4 1/3 equals b. So we have our b and we have our slope. So all we have to do is plug them in for this guy right here. So we plug them in and we come up with y equals negative 1/6 x plus 4 1/3. Next, we are asked to determine whether a scatter plot displays the number of texts and the number of calls made daily. If there is a positive or negative correlation, describe the meaning. Remember, correlation is if there's a trend to the data. Positive goes up from left to right. A negative goes down from left to right. And can I draw a line through this data? It looks fairly close and it looks like it's going down. So this is a negative correlation. And so now can I describe its meaning? Well, I already have the answer here. The more calls you make, so the more calls is up here, the less text you send. So here's more calls. Do I send a lot of text? No, not really. Now, the more text I send, the less calls I make. Now here we have a table that shows the annual attendance at an amusement park. Now, we're asked to write the regression line for the data. Well, before I write the regression line, I'm going to label these points. This would be my x, that would be my y. So I just go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the only reason why I'm drawing these points out is to get a good idea of what points would fit the line the best. And now I go, and I'm also going to label this. I'm going to just jump right to 60, 65, 70, 75, 80. So here we go. 0 is at 75, and actually I'm going to pick a different color. 0 is at 75, 1 is at 80, 2 is at 72, 3 is at 68, which is somewhere in there, 4 is at 65, 5 is at 60. So I get a good general idea. So I'm going to pick that point because I like that point. I'm going to pick that point. So I'm picking these 2 points to write my equation of the line. So now I have 2 points. So on the next slide again, it was this point, and if I can draw a circle on it, this point. So it's point 272, and it's point 465. So the first thing we have to do is to find our slope, and then we will use a y-intercept from the graph. So let's go ahead and find our slope. Our m, how do we do that? We have to take y minus y over x minus x. So what is my x's and y's? Here's my y column. So I have 72 minus 65 over 2 minus 4. We simplify the top to get negative 7. Oh, not negative 7, positive 7, but it will be over a negative 2, which simplifies to negative 7 halves. So we found our slope. What is my y-intercept? You could find your y-intercept totally fine, but also remember back to a couple videos ago. I have 0 for my x, so I am given my y-intercept of 75, so I'm not going to work too hard at it. I'm just going to go y equals negative 7 halves, which is my slope, x. What is my y-intercept? It is plus 75. A couple more examples here. Find the inverse of the relation. All the inverse says is to reverse the x and the y. So all I'm going to do is switch them. So now my set goes 8, 7, goes 10, 9, and it goes 12, 11. And there is the inverse of the relation. Now I'm asked to find the inverse of this function. It's kind of the same lines as switching the x and the y, and I'm going to change this f of x to a y. We want to do the same exact thing with our letters and then solve for y. So I'm going to switch my letters. I'm going to make this an x equals 5/11 y plus 10. Notice how I just switched my letters. Now we're going to solve for y. The very first thing we have to do is subtract 10 from both sides. So we get x minus 10 equals 5/11 y. Next thing, we want to get that 11 out of there. So I'm going to multiply by 11 here. Now be very careful though. Here's where it trips up a lot of people. We have to multiply this whole thing by 11. So we have to take it times the x and the 10 to get 11x minus 110 equals 5y. Now what do you think we have to do with this 5y? You're absolutely correct. We have to divide everything. We have to divide everything by 5. So y equals 11/5 x. I don't know that as a decimal, so I'm just going to leave it 11/5 x minus 110 divided by 5 is 22. So this would be a totally acceptable answer. Or how you're used to saying it is y equals 11/5x minus 22. You're used to seeing it with y on the left side. So what I did was switch my letters and numbers to the other side. And I hope you've enjoyed Chapter 4, Part 2. Have a great rest of your day.